think we got it figured out. Ladies and gentlemen, the incomparable Sarah Blomstrom from Chicago Title. Did I say Blomstrom right? Is that right?
That's right.
Yes. Excellent. And Kristen up there in the top, for those of y'all can see, she is remote with us. She is our title ninja. And we're going to be explaining what is title insurance, what is going on, how do I read a title commitment, all of that good stuff that I get a lot of questions about. And I'm going to let the experts talk about it. So I'm going to be quiet and go sit over here.
Okay, I'm hardly the expert, but I can get us started. Kristen is the expert. Like Colin said, she's online. I'm going to try really hard not to hang up on the Zoom while we also toggle the screen here. So the first thing I'm going to do is try to bring up the slides that I already have. Let me see. That's me. We're going to skip it. Okay, because Kristen's going to explain the title commitment. But before she jumps in, if you guys are brand new to real estate, you probably had people ask, like, what's the difference between title insurance and homeowners insurance, and how often do I pay it, and what's the premium, and what's the deductible? And it's not the same as homeowners insurance, right? It's different. So I like to talk about title commitments kind of like dating. You're dating, there might be a promise to commit, but you're not married yet. You might even get engaged. So you're not married till you're married, till you're standing at the altar, you say I do, and even until you sign that marriage certificate, right? So with a title commitment, our job is to issue the title insurance, but we don't do that. We just make a commitment to do that. We have to do our due diligence, get all the things cleaned up, check all the boxes off, dot all the I's, cross all the T's. And then you actually don't get your title insurance, your policy, until after the closing, right? You're going to get all that paperwork. So Kristen's going to talk a little bit about that. The easiest way to remember it is to break it down into 4 schedules, A, B, C, and D.
Well, before we do that, can you define what title insurance covers? Because it's not homeowners insurance. That's correct.
It's not.
So what does title insurance cover?
Okay, so if you're
Why do I
hearing,
need insurance?
Kristen, I'm going to let you answer that in 2 seconds. If you're here in person, I'm giving you the what is title insurance handout. And in the first paragraph, it'll tell you, I have it here on the screen, but I don't want to mess things up again. So I'm not gonna try to move the screen for those of you who are online. Kristen, do you want to tell us what title insurance is?
Yeah, hang on just a second. Okay.
Okay. We need dual.
Okay, can you hear me?
Loss prevention insurance. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So Sarah's correct. No, it's not homeowners insurance. It's an insurance against your interest in the property, or any issues that arise with prior liens, prior owners, things of that nature.
Guys, the way I like to remember it is I always tell everybody, title insurance makes sure that your house is your house. It makes sure nobody else has a claim to it. So a good example that I always think of about this is, just imagine you buy a house, you've been living there 10 years, all of a sudden you get a knock on the door from somebody and go, hey, I'm Joe Bob's grandson, and y'all did not get my signature on this. I'm an heir to the estate. This was actually 1/3 my property. You need to get out. That's what we're trying to prevent with title insurance. And Sarah said it great. It's loss prevention. You don't want to lose your house. So they do all the research to make sure that the person selling it has the right to sell it, and you are the only person that will own it afterward, and the right to own it. Now, with that being said, before they sign the insurance, like Sarah said, that's at the altar. That is when you go in for closing. Prior to that, you get a title commitment telling us, hey, we will issue insurance, but here's the catches.
Yeah,
And so that's where that's when you get a title commitment from the title company, like, hey, here's the title commitment. Almost 90% of agents just file that into jointly and then just never look at it again. But guys, it is so important that you read it, and here's why.
Yeah, and if you're brand new, again, is anyone here brand new on the call? Okay, so if you're brand new, right, the title company in Texas is title and escrow. It's under one roof. Some states like California, they're 2 separate entities. So Kristen is opening title when she gets a contract. When Colin or Melissa send a contract, they're representing the buyer or the seller. We're going to execute that contract. We're going to grab the money, right? Earnest and option. And that gives us the green light to then what we call open title on the property And then that information goes to the plants, and I always think of Monsters Inc. For some reason, when they talk about the plants and the underwriters, I picture Monsters Inc. like Ike Lebowski, you know, they're all in this like deep dark dungeon, and they're pulling all these files at the local, state, federal level to make sure, is this property in good standing where the owner can actually sell it? And that's what Kristen's doing with the underwriters and the plant people and everybody, making sure that we can actually sell it. So Kristen, sorry, we'll quit talking.
Hey,
So, like you said, there's 4
So
schedules.
That commitment, guys, has 4 pieces to it. Every single time you get a title commitment, regardless of what title company, where it comes from, if it is in the state of Texas, you will get a title commitment that has 4 schedules. I don't know why they call them schedules. It doesn't make any sense to me either, but it's A, B, C, and D.
Okay, so again, if you're online, these handouts I'm going to send to you, we will have snapshots on this presentation that you're looking at. So I gave everybody here a whited out example of a title commitment for title insurance. I'll have some screenshots here in just a second. But when you look at Schedule A, the only thing I want to pull out, and then Kristen can add to it, is that A are for actual facts. So we're going to go back to our elementary school days and say what we're almost making like an acronym. A is for actual facts. The most important information here will be who holds existing title and the legal description. So if you're following along in person, if you go down to the bottom of Schedule A, which might be on the second page because I did print that copy. So it'll say Schedule A at the top. Oh, keep going. On page, whatever. Right? It'll say end of Schedule A. So I think it's number 4. It'll show, so this is Schedule A. This is what it looks like. Okay. Kristen, do you want to speak quickly to, this is the top half of Schedule A. Remember, there's 4 schedules and we're just on Schedule A right now. It says so at the top. And there's just a few things that as the agent, I think you really need to be aware of. And that's obviously going to be what, Kristen?
That top section that you're looking at is going to list who is, you don't have an owner's name, but that's going to be who your borrower is going to be, husband, wife, whoever. And then the loan policy is going to list the loan amount and more importantly, the lender. And so when that changes, we kind of need to know. That happens a lot. The bottom half.
Hold on, Kristen, one question.
Sure.
What happens if there's a cash buyer?
You won't see that. There won't be an item number C.
Yeah, so there, you won't see that, but then also what happens with title insurance, just real quickly, I mean, I'm going left of center just a little bit, but what happens if somebody's like, I don't want title insurance?
If you don't want title insurance, then you're not going to send your contract to me. You are going to go to a real estate attorney. We do not close transactions with escrow only.
So that is something to know, because if you have a savvy client who says, well, I don't think I need that, or I'm from a different state, we don't do it that way or whatever, you want to be able to know either how to overcome or guide them, right? Okay, well, if that's how you're going to do it, then we have to look at other options or whatever. But you can always call your title company or call Kristen. So she was on section C there. Now I'm going to go to the next slide.
Hey, generally speaking, ladies and gentlemen, not getting titles policy is an idiot's choice. Okay, generally speaking, it's going to save you, I don't know, 1,500 to $2,000-ish, somewhere in there, depending on the property value. But guys, it is the biggest gamble of $200,000 or $300,000, whatever you're paying for that property, you are gambling it. So if somebody says they don't want title insurance, call me.
Yeah, it does happen. But the other thing is, just so you understand Kristen's role, is that she's not just issuing the policy. She's also preparing all the documents when there is a lender involved, which most of the time there is, right? She's working with the lender, she's working with the underwriter, she's working with both agents to prepare all the documents, not just the title commitment. And so what she was going to point out next is at the bottom of Schedule A, this is the second half of that same page, is number 4, legal description of the land. Now, if you're brand new, there's a difference between the address, the physical address, and the legal description. And this is sometimes where we have to push pause if an agent sends over the wrong legal description or no legal description, which has happened, because this is what we're insuring, right, Kristen? Not 123 ABC Street. We're insuring Correct. The legal description. Anything you want to add, Kristen?
Well, more importantly, on number 3 is yours is blank, and you'll see Jane Smith or Jane Doe or somebody. Number 3 is really important because that tells you who is currently the recorded owner of that property. so when you send me a contract and you've been talking to Jane Smith and my title commitment comes back and there's a Jane and a John or Jane, John and Sally, that's something that you need to be on the lookout for, because then I need to know where are all these other people.
Right.
And
Because
sometimes
everybody that's on line 3 has to sign the contract to sell it. Everybody.
So the one that they have here in front of them, Kristen, is a little different. So on number 3, it says, and I whited it out, but it says blank and blank, comma, married couple. Right? So it has the husband and the wife's first and last names. So that means that both of them have to sign.
Yeah, or sometimes you'll see Schedule C requirements, or we find out somebody's passed away. Those are all other things that get more involved. But that's one of the first red flags is who owns the property. Number 4, like Sarah said, yes, the legal description is what I insure on. I don't care if it's 1, 2, 3 ABC or not. Addresses change from time to time. Avenue, street, it doesn't matter. But as long as everything in number 4 is correct, and yes, your contract has to be correct, not only for us, but for the mortgage company if there's one involved.
Yeah. So if this is a pop quiz, there's 4 schedules. We're on Schedule A. What does A stand for?
Actual facts.
Actual facts. And give me maybe 1 or 2 of the 4 or 5 actual facts that we've talked about. What's one thing that we're looking for?
Name of the seller.
Yep. 4 names.
Legal address.
Legal description, borrower's name,
And the proposed buyer.
proposed and amount. Okay. By the way, Colin also, and we'll get to this in a minute, but he did bring up how much is title insurance, and he said it's going to be $1,500 or $2,000. I'll show you a quick hack, because some of you in certain markets will want to use that as a negotiating tactic. Oh, my buyer will pay title, or how much is it if we offer? And there's a way on our app that you can figure that out really fast based on the sales price. It generates it for you.
And by the way, guys, that number is actually regulated by the Texas Department of Insurance. There's a calculation that goes into it. It is a set price. There is no guessing.
And no negotiating.
There's
and
no
it's not-
negotiating. I can't talk to Sarah and Kristen and say, hey, can you charge me less on this one?
Yeah.
Doesn't work that way.
Okay, so there's the review for A. Any questions? As a teacher, you're supposed to allow for wait time, but we'll move forward.
Wait for the courageous ones to speak up.
Yeah. All right, Schedule B. If you look at the picture first, you see the picture, and then you see at the house from a bird's eye view, you see a little bit of a backyard, and then in this example, you see what's called an easement, right? So Kristen's going to talk a little bit about this section of the title commitment, because it's going to talk about if any other entities, if you will, have a vested interest. So I like to call it buyer notification or buyer beware in certain cases. So if somebody's looking at this property that's pictured here, and they're like, I don't want anybody coming into my backyard to check utility lines, it's not a mother may I. They're not going to show up and go, do you mind if we come? Right? They're going to come in and trim trees or address down power lines, and you don't have a, you can't say yes or no. So Kristen, you want to talk a little bit more about section B?
More importantly, these are things that I do not insure. These are all exceptions to the title policy. Things to be aware are the easements, HOA, any type of municipal utility districts. The Schedule B will also talk about any mineral leases, things like that. That is also something we don't insure. We don't have anything to do with them. If you have a client in a rural area that has any interest in those types of searches, there's a company called Hollerbach and Associates. They will do a complete mineral search for you. So we just put on that schedule what is filed of record. Like I said, any kind of mineral oil leases that will show you any HOA or covenants and restrictions to the property, what you can and can't do. And then any
What's
issue.
another way of saying covenants and restrictions
Rules.
or HOA
HOA
stuff.
rules.
So this
Yes.
is another where you want to make sure that your client knows,
Yeah.
hey, I have a big old RV,
Yes, put it on the front.
Yes, that you can't park on the street.
But-
Yeah. I was gonna say, Kristen, what's that name of the company again? The oil.
Hollerbach.
Hollerbach?
Hollerbach. I believe it's Hollerbach.
Yeah.
Hollerbach and Associates.
Hey, everybody, I really like what Kristen said that earlier, that section B, and I really liked Sarah's alliteration there, is buyer beware. Okay, this is not, section B is what they are not going to insure. There is always something in section B, always. And it has to do, like usually it says something about fraud or whatever. But as you read through that section B, it's gonna tell you, hey, look, there's an easement back here, and if that falls into the ocean, we're not insuring it. They're like, whatever it might be, they're gonna say that in there. Honestly, I don't see a whole lot in section B unless it has to do with easements or things of that nature. When she puts in the HOA covenants, if the HOA tells you you can't demolish your house and you do it, and you're dealing with the HOA, they are not going to insure you coming back and helping them fight. They, like, whatever's in section B, it's like buying a car and say, hey, look, we're going to buy your car, but we're not insuring the mirror. If the mirror falls off, that's on you. Okay, so that's what this section is for. Buyer beware. I like that alliteration. That's really
Thank
good.
you. Kristen, can you talk briefly about, because this happened not long ago. I don't think it was with you. It may have been with Adrian, but somehow somebody, the seller purchased the house, right? Seller's the buyer. Now they become the seller and they have put in a pool. And so they put in a pool, so they have to do another survey and they find, uh-oh, the pool's a little bit into an easement. So what happens when and if, and where would that be found? Something like that, Kristen?
It'll be on Schedule B. The pool company,
You can sue the pool company. They
that's
should have
the
done the due
problem.
diligence.
So depending on how, much of the pool is in the easement, if it's just the concrete, if it's the pool, me as a closer, when I'm reviewing your title commitment, I'm going to review them. And when I send it to you, I'm going to tell you what you need to be aware of. In some instances, if there is a pull over or into an easement, or even sometimes a home when it's constructed is built into an easement or maybe a setback line, there can be documents filed and exceptions made. They're called variances and they're filed with the city. That can be done to kind of resolve the issue, and then we don't take exception to it. But say you come to me, we get the pool or the new survey and I see, I'm going to tell you, hey, this is what we're taking exception to, or no, we're not going to take exception to it because it's just the concrete that's into the easement. But yeah, the pool company would.
Yeah. It was a situation that happened recently. And then I have another one, Kristen, where somehow the sellers had built a deck or even a patio. It may have been concrete. And I mean, there was like a tiny little corner there. So same, but different.
Was the, it was I guess talk to me more about the addition, and was it into an easement or a setback line or what?
Yeah, I think it was an easement, but it was just kind of, they were going back and forth of, is it a little tiny corner, cement corner of the patio that maybe went over the boundary line, if you will.
Okay, something, if
Yeah.
it's minimal, then, we won't take exception to it.
Okay,
It's not that much of a risk.
yeah. So there's not always a hard, fast line.
Correct.
So I guess my point is, if you get something like that on Schedule B, it doesn't mean the contract has to terminate and the whole deal is going to fall apart, right? That's where Kristen's expertise and her ability to say, here's what we can do, here's what we can't do. And sometimes, by the way, Kristen will say, correct me if I'm wrong, Kristen's not always the end all be all. She gets to have a lot of authority, but it also, I mean, the rules are rules. So she can't always bend the rules and say, well, I'll go ahead and do it, right? Because that's her business on the line. So anything you want to add to that, Kristen?
Right. We answer to an underwriter, just like lenders do. So we take issues to an underwriter that's going to review it, and they assess the situation and they assess the risk for some of these bigger issues, or when we have to deal with like air type situations. So when we have an instance that I can't tell you yes or no, or if I will work towards a different solution, or if we can get approval elsewhere. And then that's when we take it to the underwriter and they're the end all be all. And we do have, you know, a very large group of underwriters that we work with, and you may ask one and they may say no, but you talk to a different one who's maybe had more experience or different experience, and they say, okay, well, we can take exception, you know, or you know, we can close with it. So just very much a case by case basis.
That's why sometimes I have agents that'll say, well, such and such title company said they can close it. Right? And that might be true.
Be very
That
careful
might be
with that.
true. But we would also encourage you before you call and say, well, we're moving the file, right? At least call us, because we could say, make sure and ask these questions, because sometimes when you move the file anyway, you're starting all over. They can't close
Well,
you
then
the
they
next
still
day.
can't close it.
Yeah, and then they find out they still can't close it. So just do your due diligence with that too.
I will say this, unfortunately, guys, title reps will say just about anything to get your business, kind of like a lender. And sometimes if somebody tells you no, you're like, well, I'm gonna go ask dad then, because mom said no. You're gonna go over there and he's gonna be like, oh, absolutely, we can do it. Yeah, we do that all the time. And when the rubber meets the road, they're like, oh, wait, yeah, no, that's a problem.
I would like to counter that, sir.
Some
I was like,
title people.
I have often said, I am not sure that we're gonna be able to do that. So let me check with my escrow
Well,
officer.
you're responsible. Hey guys, you gotta remember, these guys can't undercut price. They can't, they all want service and they want to show you that they can do everything. And so they will talk sideways out of their mouth. You gotta be careful, because
not them though.
not them. I'm just saying some title people, I've run into it a lot. And guys, just imagine if they do this, or if you don't read your Schedule B and all of a sudden you didn't inform your client, because I know they didn't read it, and all of a sudden the city public service comes in and digs out their pool because you weren't paying attention and they have no recourse on it. Guess who they're going to blame?
Yeah.
All right, so that's the top half. This is the bottom half of Schedule B. Kristen, anything on the top half or bottom half that you want to point out in terms of where they might find these types of issues?
But they're actually usually at the bottom. It's section or number 10 and number 9. Sometimes right in that section, you'll see where it talks about HOA or restrictions and covenants. Right on this particular title commitment, it's just talking about leases that may or may not be filed. It talks about rights of party in possession. That's always going to be there. I'm not going to go out and inspect your property and make sure that you take possession. We can, but then you have to pay me, and I'm sure you don't want to do that. And then it cuts off where it talks about easements, and then below that is where you'll see easements and things that are filed of record.
Yeah, I always read these schedules from the bottom up, folks. Read the
Yeah.
last line, second to last line, third to.
That's a great
And
suggestion.
as you go through that, you're gonna get to a point where it's just a bunch of legalese, and you're like, this doesn't matter to me. That's usually when I stop reading. Because the first couple of them are legalese, like, we're not gonna insure anything that's not in the contract. We're not gonna insure anything that you don't tell us about. You know, all that stuff's pretty standard. But from the bottom up, you're gonna see the problems that are specific to that property.
Good suggestion. Okay, so pop quiz, Schedule A is for what? Actual facts. Yep. Schedule B is for buyer beware, buyer notification, all the things that Kristen is not able to or going to ensure, all the exceptions.
So if guys, just real quick, if there is a ton of stuff on Schedule B, let's say there's 900 items on there, they will still issue the policy. You just need to be okay with these things not being insured. Okay, that's the big thing
I'll
about
still
Schedule
marry
B.
you.
Yeah, but I'm not taking your
I'm
kids
just
with you.
doing this, and
Yeah,
that.
no kids, no this, and you can't wear orange.
Can you talk to us about the intentionally deleted, like F? What are, and then in the 1 to 4, where it has.
Oh, no, don't bring that up.
No, don't bring it up.
Don't bring it up.
That's good.
Melissa has been silenced.
Well, no, I do.
We don't talk about
The
that.
first question was good.
Oh.
This, I know what you're gonna ask,
Okay.
with who covers the rest of the stuff.
Yeah, any more of the,
But
anymore.
I know, it was just cool.
Yeah.
We're gonna get to that, but the intentionally deleted, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kristen, in section F on this one, if it's anything that was deleted from record on purpose. So if somebody comes up and they go, well, I have this document from whatever, 1942, and we research it and it shows, oh, this was intentionally deleted, we're not covering it. Am I right on that, Kristen?
Yeah, and then you'll also see it's for that purpose. And then also if you initially see something that's been on there and we go back and if you guys want to question something, sometimes you'll see like blanket easements or you'll see things that maybe might pertain to somewhere in your subdivision or area of land, but doesn't directly affect it. We'll go in and things are intentionally deleted from that, and then they won't show up on your policy.
So intentionally deleted could be anything? Or is
Yeah,
it just, it could be anything,
Yes.
right, okay.
Anything that doesn't, like if it was initially there and we go back and we
That's cool.
remove it.
Okay, cool.
Okay, if you're online, there should be, the title commitment that Kristen and people online are looking at is a little different than the one in our hands. So right above G, that what you're looking at right now, it just says F, intentionally deleted. That's the one they're talking about. It literally just says intentionally deleted. So that's what they're talking about right now. Okay, C. C is for clear to close, but I would prefer to say clear to continue.
I always think of it as chaos. If there's a problem with title, like you're like, oh my God, you need to fix this or we're not closing, it's here.
Yep.
C is chaos.
Okay,
This would be like where child support.
yeah.
Chuck,
I just don't like clear to close because that in our industry means something very different.
yes.
So they say, oh, we got
That's
the
a good-
title commitment back, now we can close, right?
Nope.
When it's like, no, we're still days or weeks away.
Yeah.
And it's not true because we're not clear to close until it's an if then. So I'm gonna go back to the marriage analogy, right? We're dating, we're getting serious. Now we want to propose and get engaged. Well, still, unless you elope and go get married in Vegas that same day, there's usually a couple weeks or months or whatever before you actually stand at the altar.
Preparation.
But the Schedule C is where you're gonna find out that he's still married to somebody else. And your marriage is not gonna be legal. That is where you will find this kind of shitstorm, is in Schedule C. And I'm saying that with all intended anxiety.
Yeah. Well, but it's true. So this is where most agents, if they look at any part of the policy, commitment, they go straight to Schedule C. Because they want to go, does so-and-so have a lien? Do they owe back child support, back taxes? The most common one, obviously, which says here is that they're probably going to have an existing mortgage that will get paid off, hopefully, right? That's planned, at closing. Marital status issues. So Kristen will talk about this, like, oh, well, you didn't tell us that you were, that you were married, right? Or we've had this before where they're like, well, we're divorced, but we're like, but in your heart you're divorced, but like not on paper, you know? So there's all kinds of things. So Kristen, talk a little bit, not just about what they're gonna see in Schedule C, but then maybe give us one or two quick examples.
Sorry.
My favorite, most recently, a lot of the files I was seeing, because all of the COVID situation and everybody, hopefully most of you are familiar with the forbearance or forbearances that people were going through. I closed probably about 6 in a period of about 2 months. And people, when they're disclosing their information to their listing agent, they're like, yeah, I have a mortgage. So I do a net sheet for you guys based on whatever payoff you've given me. All of a sudden I run title after you have your contract. And I'm like, hey guys, was your client in forbearance? I don't know. Well, according to this document that they were, and now they owe another $50,000. That was a phone call I had to make to an agent who didn't ask those questions when she took her listing and when I did the net sheet. And it's a divorce situation, or they're separated and they're getting a divorce. So it makes that situation that much more intense.
Yeah, so many people think being divorced is just moving out.
No.
That I can't tell you how many times that's happened to me. Well, we
No,
haven't been together for 3 years. And I'm like, but you're still married on paper. She still has to sign this document.
yes. So that's one of the biggest things I see is the forbearance thing. When people go into those agreements, and I'm sure they're stressed and there's anxiety, and none of them that I speak to can tell me, Kristen, I knew what I was signing. They're like, I had no idea. So when you're taking a listing, if you tell me, hey, Kristen, run title for me, and I'll tell you ahead of time, that way you know what you're dealing with, and then you know if you can sell it at that price or if we're going to have a situation. The other, child support liens we see,
Solar panels,
yes.
Yep.
solar
water
panels.
softeners.
Income taxes will show up. If they owe on income taxes, that'll show up. That one doesn't go away until somebody pays them. Right?
Yes.
Heirs, that's another big one. Especially if you're buying something from an estate and all of a sudden it has 16 heirs on there because he didn't have a will and he's got 43 grandkids, and that means you gotta find all 43 of them. Guys,
Yeah.
that's where, especially if you're an investor, guys, the Schedule C, you have got to be looking at very closely, because that's where your headaches show up. They
I'm
give
not-
you this title commitment weeks before closing,
Yeah.
and nobody ever really thinks about it till the day before.
I'm telling you, if you're dealing with a seller and it's somebody, it's a sibling or it's a grandchild and they're like, yeah, no, our stuff's in order. Call me first. Because I've had two situations where they said, yeah, no, we probated it. Well, they did probate one, but the grandma who died in the 1980s, they never dealt with her estate. So now I have to go back and deal with grandma who died in 80 and all of the people that now affects. And so one person has just turned into 10. And I have two.
And 3 of them live in Colorado, 2 of them we don't have phone numbers for. One's
We don't-
dead and
yeah.
has 16 kids himself, one's in
Right.
prison.
Yes.
All that comes, guys, like, when you get this, read it immediately. Like I said, Schedule C stands for chaos.
Yeah.
So here's one other thing, what Kristen mentioned, like if you're talking to a seller and they say, oh, we have all of our documents in order, we have a probate attorney, a estate planning attorney who'll come and teach classes, and the phrase that always sticks with me, that she tells all the agents to ask is, great, how quickly can you put your hands on those documents? Right? Oh, they're in my safety deposit box. Well, then they go there and they're not there. Oh, I can't remember. Right? Because you could then take those to Kristen and say, here's what they've given me. Kristen can make sure the signature and the date aren't right, or we can't accept this, or this, she had one recently where she was dealing with a mother, an elderly mother who was in decline, and there was a affidavit, for a power of attorney, and anyway, it was a mess.
Oh,
So
things get really messy when you have powers of attorneys for people who are in like Alzheimer's care. Those types of situations are kind of messy, kind of sticky. So if you're dealing with something like that, get your hands on. They should have a power of attorney. How long has mom or dad been in the facility? Those are all sorts of things that we need to know.
But I think my point is just that Rebecca, the attorney, does a really good job of saying, take the pressure off yourself. You're not being nosy. You're just saying, hey, I'm going to have to provide these documents in order to sell your home or prove that we can sell it. And so I want to get these over to the title company, make sure everything's in order and we're good to go. You don't want to list the property, get it under contract, and then find out, right? You'd rather say, let's get this cleaned up and list it in 30, 60, 90 days or however long it takes. So Schedule C, clear to close. I like to say clear to continue. Colin likes to say clear for chaos.
That's just chaos.
It's just chaos. It's just chaos, he says. But I like to say clear to continue if then. All of this is an if then. So again, Colin, it doesn't mean we're not going to issue the policy. It just means we can't until.
Right, and so everything on that Schedule C, guys, has to be removed before you can sign.
Yeah.
Some of it will be removed when you sign.
Yeah.
Right, because it says, oh, that you must pay the seller or borrower the agreed upon amount of the property or interest, right? So I've got to pay you $300,000 for this house. Well, that's not going to happen until that day. But once you do it, it's removed. Everything from Schedule C has got to go away, guys.
Okay. Kristen, do you want to talk real quickly about any of these items on the second part of Schedule C, 8 through 12?
If you're looking at the screen, number 9 talks about any association dues. We've seen HOA liens, if I find out if your seller doesn't pay their bills. Number 10, that's the deed of trust that was executed when the home was purchased. And it tells me that this Kayleen person has an interest in this property. She may not be on Schedule A. She might have been, he or she might have been a non-purchasing spouse. I don't know how many times I hear non-purchasing spouses, they're like, well, they're not on the loan. No, but that is their homestead and they are required to sign. The only time that we don't require that is when it's investment property. People get real touchy about that, being married, community property, homestead, all that stuff. And we can kind of look at that in a minute, but just so you know, if you have a property and they're married and they're both living there, they both need to sign. If it's investment and only one person was on the loan and nobody lived there, then that's different. Number 11, marital status. If you're married, spouse has to sign. And the same thing, number 12, it's the same thing. It's all about, you know, if you get married or if you get divorced, those are all things that we need to know. I have one right now. We're supposed to close tomorrow. She got married this past Friday. Just told. Husband had, at the very least, hubby or new wifey is gonna either sign on the deed conveying their interest that they may or may not have, because now they're legally married, or they can sign something called a non-homestead affidavit if you can tell me that you weren't living there and y'all were maybe shacking up at his or her house, or other house. It's all about.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Go ahead,
yeah,
Colin.
they have to fight the same dragon that your lender does. They have to fight an underwriter, okay?
Yeah.
An underwriter wants every single, they're the most, I can't imagine these people, I've never met one. Like, they're the most anal retention, like, everything has to be perfect in order to get the sign off. Kristen, Sarah, they're on your side. They're trying to help you get the documents to fight this dragon. And if they don't have them, it's not gonna happen, guys. And if you,
Right.
it's like, you get married, they can't fight the dragon without a sword.
Oh, you should teach your class. Yeah, you would.
Yeah, I was just saying, yeah, we're both teachers too.
All right. So A, actual facts. B, buyer notification or beware. C, chaos, clear to close or clear to continue. It's an if-then situation. So this is again where things can get really hung up because it could take weeks, months, upwards of a year to close properties. All right, the last one, Schedule D for disclosure. So this is the one that probably people don't really look at. Or agents don't until you get to the very bottom. You might be a little more interested in the numbers. So I'll start back at the top, but Colin has a good point about starting at the bottom and reading backwards. That's what I do on Schedule D. I always just go straight to the bottom because I'm a little more interested. So Kristen, just quickly give us the boring information about all the disclosures.
It's just a disclosure about Chicago Title, its shareholders, who owns us. We're part of a much bigger firm called Fidelity National. It gives all that information and talks about our owners, stuff that legally I have to disclose to anybody that's involved in the transaction.
Okay, and then if you have this handout here, which again, we'll leave here in the office and I'll send it via email, it says defining the title commitment. At the very bottom, it also says, it will also show the amounts being paid for the owner's title policy,
Yes, that's at the
the
bottom.
mortgage policy amount, and any endorsements. So that's what you're looking at there. Now,
What are endorsements?
Yeah.
I was just saying, because I've
There we
seen
go, here we go.
some where there's nothing and then where there's like 15.
It's like adding the insurance to your rental car.
Yeah.
Are you gonna
Yeah.
cover more stuff other than just the property?
Yes.
Yeah, depending on, your contract will tell us if there's any endorsements to your owner's policy. The one is the survey coverage, if you do or don't want that. And then
Can you
other.
explain that to us? Because that's a big question that we have, Kristen, a lot. Is
Mm-hmm.
guys, for those of y'all that read the contract carefully, it says who's paying for title insurance, and then down a couple paragraphs into it, there's two little check boxes that say, are we getting the extra coverage and who's paying for it? Why is that on the contract, Kristen?
It's on the contract because it's an option for you guys if you want the additional coverage. For that particular coverage, you do have to have a survey. And then it will show up on the title commitment in Schedule B. It deletes everything but shortages in the area. We'd have to go back.
Can
to
you give us some examples of shortages?
So if you are dealing with acreage, and you have a survey that says it's 3.25, and we have a new survey that says it's 3.14. The other problem or with that being said, survey companies and the equipment that is used vary from company to company, individual to individual, so they're not ever exactly the same. So it might say it's 3.25, it might be 3.1, but we don't insure on any of that. And then,
It's really important, guys, for larger land, because over 10 acres, you don't need a plat. And so the city doesn't have a record of it, the county doesn't have a record of it, you're literally just using a survey. And if some guy's out there with a measuring tape and taking steps and just 17 paces from the oak tree, the meets and bounds, guys, for those of you that remember the test, that can get hairy. And now the question is do you want to insure that extra 0.14 just in case? And who's paying for it? Did I say that right, Kristen?
yes.
Okay,
Is there anything, I'm sorry, this is a serious question for me. Every time I've ever seen an endorsement charge, it always has something to do with the lines or the survey. Is there anything else that would fall into the shortages category? Outside of just the actual landlines?
No,
Okay. So guys, that's the question. Now, I'll be honest with you, as a personal thing, I always check, yes, we're paying for it, and I make somebody pay for it. I gotta be honest, I don't always check at the end of the day whether or not there's an endorsement on it, but I would rather my clients have that insured than not. Because if you don't check that box and that 0.1 acres turns out that it really is the neighbors, then you just lost it and you have no recourse to go fight it. If you've got the extra insurance, they will come to your rescue and help you. Now, guys, don't ask me how they help or what they do, but they will come in and they might give you, whatever that value of the property is worth. You're insured. I just lost 0.1 acres. I need you to pay me, I bought it for $57,000 an acre. I need $5,000. And that's what insurance is for, guys.
Melissa.
okay, go ahead.
Well, Melissa was saying sometimes she sees 15 endorsements and sometimes there's none. The other endorsements are everything or anything that your mortgage company is going to require. And that could be depending on the type of loan or the type of property. There's like if you have a mobile home, they want us to guarantee taxes.
Because
There,
that's personal property, no?
So I guess the one I had it was a mobile home on a lot of land and it was a VA loan. And it was like, I don't know, I've never seen that many before.
and if it's a mobile
I'll find
home,
it.
there's endorsements for that. And depending on, like, if you have an adjustable rate, or different types of other factors for the loan, that might add to it. But I think there's 2 endorsements for the manufactured home, if I remember right. And then there's the T19, which again has to do with the property and the survey. There's something called a T17 that has to do, if the property is in what they call a planned unit development. It does not mean it's in an HOA, but, there's that one. And then there's taxes, one that we're guaranteeing certain taxes. And then there's 1 or 2 other ones that they always require. But yeah, it's anything that a lender can request whichever ones they want, and it just kind of varies. Randolph Brooks, I think, usually only wants like 2 or 3.
Commitment here. Got it.
On
Okay,
construction, you'll see more.
y'all have any questions, those of you online?
I have one.
Go ahead, Colin.
And it's a little bit outside of Schedule D though,
Go ahead.
but it is a title specific question. How would we know that we need a PID form, disclosure form? The Public Improvement District, because that became law last September, folks. And if you don't disclose that, I think it's like a $15,000 penalty. It's a big one. So Kristen, how would we know if a property is in a PID? Does that show up on your title commitment?
Yeah, on the title commitment, usually on like a tax certificate, will disclose if they're in certain types of districts. Oh, that's not.
I'm pointing this out, folks, because most title companies are like, some, like, the good ones are aware of that law change, some of them are not. And you need to know to look for the public improvement district. What that is, guys, is it's a line in your tax code. If you ever look at your tax bill, you're paying so much to Northeast ISD, so much to city services, so much to Alamo area colleges, so much, right? One of those lines is a public improvement district. Basically, the city decided that this neighborhood needed new whatevers, and they gave them some money, and now you're getting taxed a little bit extra for it. That is a separate disclosure form you must fill out. So read your tax certificate too, but the title company is gonna help you figure that out. So make sure you ask, is this house in a pit? I'll
So
be
your
completely honest
question-
with you, there's like 4 pits in all of San Antonio, and they're really weirdly located. Or 8 pits, or whatever it is.
So is your question, how do you know? Is that what you asked?
How does she know?
How
and
does
do we
she know?
to fill out that disclosure form?
Kristen, did you answer it?
Oh, I said if it's filed, it'll show up of record and it's gonna show up on the title commitment, and then a lot of them will show up on the tax certificate.
Yeah, okay. Okay,
And then it tells us, yeah, that there's certain forms when they are that we have to have signed.
Hey, Israel just texted me a question because his mic isn't working. He
Okay.
said, do the endorsements change depending on the title company?
No, they vary by lender.
There you go.
We don't,
Great.
yeah, we don't dictate them. There may be I will say this, Colin, let me correct. It may, vary by how a title company discloses. I've seen where they'll send out the title commitment and they will automatically include coverage, and then you have to opt out of it. But if you don't ever opt out of it, then you're gonna get it included. And but that's just for the owner's policy. The loan policy is whatever the mortgage company wants.
See, here's the funny thing. is that-
Excellent. The second question he asked is, can you please elaborate on how to transfer mineral rights, etc.?
That was, yeah, that's a big part of what I asked y'all here.
Transferring mineral right, so if you have a property,
Mineral
like a
right.
rural property, and you want to, your seller is selling, and if they want to convey, there's a document that says that the seller is going to convey or is going to retain those minerals, and that has to be completed. And then those reservations or exceptions are going to be lined out very specifically in the deed, which conveys the property from the seller to the buyer.
Right, guys, and also, like, for the most part, residential properties, like my house, for example, I live on 1/3 of an acre right off 281 in Bitters, okay? There is no mineral rights with that property. I can't start drilling for oil. If I find oil, it's not mine, okay? If up from the ground comes a bubbling crude, hey, I gotta give it to somebody else, okay?
Right.
Most residential properties do not come with mineral rights.
Right.
However, generally speaking, if you go buy 100 acres out in the middle of nowhere and there's no discussion of it, like there's nothing comes up in the title, the mineral rights automatically transfer to you because you're buying the land, everything under it, and everything above it. Okay. Generally speaking, but in that commitment they sent you, she will tell you if there's any leases or anything else that are coming up in her search that she's like, hey, look, if you want to cry about the minerals later, we're not insuring it because there is a lease on it. So you need to bring up that lease. And also in my humble experience, which correct me if I'm wrong here, Kristen, typically if there is mineral rights that are not owned by the owner, this is a whole thing, lawyers involved, we got to go talk, like it's not something that's going to be handled at title.
Right.
This is something you're going to have to go figure out on your own because now we're in the big boy leagues.
Right. And again, that Hollerbach company can help too.
Okay.
Right, and they're called landmen. That's their job is to research that. They live in the basement of courthouses, and they're like little trolls. They come out every now and then. I found it. So guys, mineral rights are a little bit particular. The vast majority of residential sales that you do are going to have nothing to do with it. If you start getting into farm and ranch or outside of city limits, that's when you need to start paying attention to it.
So like
Yes.
this one says oil, gas, and mineral lease dated December 10th, 1980 from Fabian Mudd.
So, right, okay, so Melissa just pulled up one of her title commitments, and that's on Schedule B, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's on Schedule B. And it says right here, we are not insuring any fights that come up over this oil lease dated December 10th, 1980, that we found in this book on this page number in this basement.
Yes.
And if that comes up, do not call us about insurance. With Schedule
Yeah.
B means buyer beware.
And when we send you guys the commitments, or at least to the buyers, you can request copies of anything that's on that Schedule B and you can review them, especially when you have buyers who have attorneys. You guys can review them.
Oh, and if y'all want to read some racist stuff, you read some of those old ladies. I'm telling you, woo, you get something from the 1800s. It's pretty,
yeah.
They get pretty racy. But guys,
Yes.
just so you know, like I've read before, this will be sold to no Negroes or Negro descent, and all this kind of stuff. Guys, the laws changed. There's a
Right.
federal law that prohibits that from being in there. So don't panic if you see something like that. If you know it's against the law to say something like that, it's probably been wiped clean.
Yes.
Okay, so in the chat, I just put the two links that I referenced earlier with what is title insurance, defining the title and commitment. So that you could click on those right now. You can download them, save them to your desktop, whatever you want to do. I'll leave copies here at the office as well. I think to wrap up our time, what I'd hoped to do was to show you on our app, which I'm not able to log into for some reason. If you don't have our app, you can go to the App Store. It's called Chicago Agent One. And if you go to the seller section, I cannot believe that.
Hey, by the way, guys, you don't have to download the app by yourself. You can have your clients download this same app.
Yeah.
And they can do their own net sheets. That's normally what I do because sellers lie too. Buyers are liars and so are sellers. Well, I didn't tell you about the.
Buyers are liars and sellers are worse.
Got sued.
All right, I give up.
I told you I paid cash for my solar panels, but I really didn't.
But that's
Sarah,
why
do
I
you want Holly to try and log in?
Yeah, I don't know if it's my touch screen or what that's
Okay.
messing me up.
Okay.
But I was just gonna log in real quickly to show you guys the app, only because you can get to the policy amount. And also because I just like to promote it for those of you who are working with sellers or even renters, because we've got some great, or buyers. We've got some great options.
Yeah, go back to that screen. Let's check for some understanding. Yeah, go back. Yeah, this one screen.
This?
I love.
Let's Ronald. Ronald, I have a question for you. What does Schedule A talk about? Ronald's gone. Who else is in here? Andrea, what's Schedule A?
Actual facts.
Yep, it's just information, guys. Just check the information, make sure it's correct. Zagla, what's the scariest schedule on there?
Schedule C.
That's right. Schedule C is the craziest. How are you gonna find out how much they're charging for this insurance? Anybody?
It's a. You just.
It's on Schedule D. It's on Schedule D,
Well, before.
but that app doesn't include the endorsements that the lender may require.
Yeah,
So
I
look
was
at
gonna say
Schedule
you
D.
just go to the app if you don't know ahead of time.
Yeah, you can go to the app and it'll
Until
tell
you
you,
get this.
it'll tell you based on the purchase price. It doesn't
Yeah.
include all the endorsements.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? That's really easy to calculate.
Polly and Kristen, I made you the host, by the way.
Yeah, you're in charge. And then, what schedule tells you what they're not insuring?
B.
No, thank you, Andrea. Schedule B, guys.
B?
Guys, it's so funny. Nobody reads that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say this. Guys, read a couple of these title commitments. They are, read it before bed, you'll go to sleep. It's easy. But I will say this, you've got to get familiar. I can look at a title commitment in about 5 minutes and tell you everything that's on that piece of paper. And you got to get in the habit of looking at this because this is one of those things where ignorance will absolutely bite you in the ass. If you are ignorant to what's on here, it's gonna bite you. So go through it, make sure you understand. Schedule C is gonna bite you before closing. Schedule B will bite you after closing. Schedule D.
Schedule C will keep you from closing.
Yeah, Schedule C will keep you from closing. A and D, just make sure that's right, guys. I mean,
Okay.
you're not, and you can't negotiate the price. Oh my God, I can't believe this has got $2,000 worth of endorsements. That's crap. Sorry, you wanted a VA loan. That's what's happening. Okay.
So this is the app. It looks a little different if you're downloading it from your phone. Polly's on the desktop right now. So up at the very, very top right-hand corner, you can see the word seller is in blue. So the easiest way to get to the policy amount for a home is to reverse engineer it, because traditionally, typically the seller pays for the owner's title policy. Of course, everything's negotiable, but the way we have it on the app is under seller, since that's typically how it happens. So you would click on seller. Let's make up a sales price of 300,000, Polly. And that's all you have to give the app in order to get that amount. And then she's going to go down and hit compute. And then what happens, and I can always teach a class on the app if you want later on, because it has some really awesome calculators to use when you're out in the field dealing with clients, or if somebody drives by and says, can I afford this house? Right? And then you can give them some numbers. So it pulls up some information that you're not looking for at the moment. You just want the policy amount. So you're going to go to detailed closing costs. She's going to click on that amount button right there. And it says it right up at the top. Now, again, this $1,800 amount is based on the sales price of the home. So she put in 300,000. If she put 425, 500,000, $1 million, it would obviously go up in cost. But that's a really great way that if you're, for whatever reason, saying, hey, let's offer to pay this, you could know what that's going to cost your client. The other thing that I'll do before we wrap up is to plug Kristen in Chicago Title is if you're working with a buyer and they're paying the title policy, what is it your right to do then? Technically,
Title company.
to direct the title to a title, to direct the contract to a title company, in which case you could go, great, we'd love to use Kristen Bratton at Chicago Title. Because a lot of agents will say, well, I work mostly with buyers. And I know that a lot of your buyers right now are not having to pay title. I get that. But every once in a while, right?
I have a buyer paying title. We're gonna send it over to you
Yeah.
today.
Great, Melissa. Woo, woo.
Hey, Kristen,
And make sure
I've got a hard question for you. Well, not a hard question. I think you know the answer.
Okay.
And then before Colin, you say that, because I don't want anyone to hang out for that without me really plugging Kristen one more time.
Oh, I was gonna plug this.
Melissa and Colin, can you just give a quick testimonial to Kristen and her level of service and what you've experienced throughout the transaction and at the closing table?
So,
Which one's Kristen? Kidding.
if
I'm kidding.
I've used Kristen twice. This will be the third time. She's been amazing. She's honestly, and I hate that, I know it sounds corny, but she's different than any other title or escrow officer that I've
Aw.
I've been in the business a little while, and
I'll say
love her.
this. I've seen Kristen work with some of the agents, and I've seen Kristen work with me. She definitely shifts the way she works. And Kristen just like I like it because she leaves me alone, and if I send her a 1-sentence email, she handles it. Personally, that's what I need. I'm moving at 1,000 miles an hour. I don't need to have long-winded conversation. I get 90% of it. If I have a question, I'm not afraid to ask. So I personally appreciate that, just to streamline my business to the way I work.
There's no sugarcoating.
Yeah, it's like, just tell me what I need to know, let's go. But if
I
it's
love
a
that.
new agent, maybe she'll, hey, listen, honey.
Yeah.
You did this wrong. Yeah, and guys, it's okay. Remember, their biggest selling point is customer service.
Right.
That is a title company's, they can't, I mean, you can talk to them about their escrow fee, which is $500 to $1,000, depending on the title company and the workload. But the title insurance guys, that is fixed.
We're not allowed to.
They can't raise it or lower it.
We're really not.
Well, that's probably a company policy. I've talked to some of them now. But guys, you want to find somebody that will answer your questions, answer your phone calls, help you fix problems. Now there's a limit, guys. If there's 43 errors and you need some help, she's not going to skip trace them and start making phone calls for you. That is not her job. That's your job. But she'll tell you, here's the 43 people. Here's the information I do have on them. Here's where I got that will from, or here's where I got this information from. And that will help you do your job, right? So just make sure that like you pick a title company that people talk to you. And guys, this is how you find out if people talk to you, is by having them come in and talk to you. So, but before we go, Kristen, I want to ask kind of a tricky, this is going to be like a 3-headed dragon here.
Okay.
Whenever we fill out a contract, we say who's paying for title insurance, right?
Uh-huh.
And we check the buyer or the seller.
Uh-huh.
How come if, let's say I'm representing the seller and I say, hey, or let's say I'm representing the buyer and I go, the seller's going to pay the title insurance. How come sometimes there's still a title insurance cost for the buyer?
Because you have, depending on the transaction, if you have a loan policy, the buyer is still responsible for the mortgage policy. You agreed to pay for the seller title insurance, not both.
Bingo. So guys, there's multiple types of insurance that go through her office. Can you please explain the difference between a buyer's policy and a seller's policy and why these funds don't just go into one big title insurance line?
Well, one, because that's how the contracts are written. It says that you're paying, whichever one of you is paying for the owner's policy. Somewhere else in the contract, I don't know what paragraph talks about the lender's requirements and their policy. And that is typically paid for by the buyer. It's their lender that's requiring those. So there's
What?
Go ahead, Colin.
Define an owner's policy and a lender's policy for me.
An owner's policy, we're covering your buyer. It's reviewing all the information from the seller, but it's covering your buyer against something that we could have potentially missed in that chain since that seller owned it or somebody else prior. The mortgagee policy is similar, or the loan policy is similar. We're protecting the mortgage or the lender and ensuring that they're in first lien position because your home is the collateral for the money that they're giving you. And they want to make sure that nobody else has any interest in it either.
And in my experience, correct me if I'm wrong on this one, Kristen,
Uh-huh.
most lenders require the lendee
Yes,
to pay that.
yes.
Like you can't transfer that off to somebody else. And so guys, whenever you write in, I've seen this so many times, all closing costs paid for by buyer, all closing costs paid for by seller. Hold on a second. The
Mhm.
definition of closing cost is not defined.
Mm-mm.
That is not a definition that anybody will ever say. Everybody throws it out because it sounds sexy. I'll pay all the closing costs. That is not defined. Is closing cost my gas money to go to title? Is the closing cost the escrow fee? Is the closing cost the buyer's policy, the lender's policy? And sometimes you can't do that. VA is notorious about that. VA, you gotta pay for this. We can only pay this much, this or that. Guys, so don't freak out if you see title insurance. Well, the seller was supposed to pay that. Yeah, but,
Right.
okay? It's a yeah, but situation. So don't, that's why you need to reach out to Kristen and talk to her. Because
Yeah,
I'm gonna
and
say that now and you're gonna forget it next week.
Yeah, talk about specifics or tell me exactly what you're trying to accomplish so we can figure out how to make it work if we can make it work that way.
Absolutely. I think we should invite them back out to read a HUD statement. What do y'all think?
Yeah.
Kristen, you wanna do HUDs with us?
Sure.
I like that one too. That's a lot of
Yeah,
fun.
it's funny. If you have a trade transaction, so you have a closing disclosure and then you have a buyer or seller's closing statement. Most people don't know how to read the closing disclosure, which I happen to like the closing disclosure. I don't care for the statement, but we'll bring both and we'll go over both.
All right, guys, because most people, it cracks me up how few agents
agents
realize
don't.
that what you filled out on the contract is transferred to and they're like, well, why is this on here? I'm like, because you checked that box, dummy, right? If
And
you
then-
didn't check that box, it wouldn't be on there.
Mhm.
Well,
Yes,
But look, Kristen's laughing, Sarah's laughing, and they're
agree.
laughing because I'm saying it rudely, but I mean,
It's
it's
the way
that
it is.
remedial. Why does my eye hurt? Because you stuck a pencil in it. Like, quit doing that. So
taxes
let,
is a big one. Taxes, property taxes.
why do you say that?
Because people don't understand how taxes work and they're like, why am I paying for it twice? Colin, I'm sure you can understand that.
yeah.
why am I paying for it twice?
Oh,
Because
yeah.
people don't know
good
how to
question.
read the statement. There's prorations and then you have an escrow account.
Oh.
But because they
Well,
don't know-
Okay.
In my humble experience, I've learned that most people don't know the difference between the word credit and debit.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
Right? How, look, she's laughing because how many times you have to explain to somebody? I'm like, okay.
yes. And
Credit
it-
means
and
it
it-
goes
and it
up,
can be
debit
a-
means it goes down.
Yeah, and it can be a realtor that supposedly has been around for forever. Y'all don't,
It's always that one too. I've been doing this for 35 years.
yes.
Well,
But in fairness, most of these people only do it once every 7 to 10 or more years. You know what I'm saying? Not the realtors, but the client.
The clients, yes.
So it is it is fair for them to ask these things, and our job is to try to make it at a fourth grade level so
Right,
that
but
anybody can
yes.
explain it.
Yeah,
That's what
no,
I think. I mean, even title insurance, I think we should be able to, a fourth grader should be able to explain.
Guys, do it right now. Pull up a title policy from something you closed a long time ago, find it, read backwards, read from the bottom up on each one of these, and you'll see everything that I'm talking about.
I'm scared.
Some of them do get scary, guys,
Like
but,
the one I showed you.
oh yeah,
With, when it gets to land and stuff like that, it scares the hell out of me.
yeah.
With all the mineral,
Well, we can have Kristen come back out. We hope those of you online that if we've not met you in person, that we can do so. We would love the opportunity for you to direct your next contract, the next opportunity you have, give Kristen a shot. I did share her contact information on the slides earlier, which I think I already closed out of. Colin has my contact information, Melissa does, so you're welcome to follow up with us if you have any additional questions. I actually have another appointment to get to, so.
Yeah, does anybody have any questions that, if Sarah's gotta go, I'll try to answer it. Or we still got Kristen, because she's not going anywhere yet, because she doesn't know how to turn Zoom off.
She, you know, is Polly sitting right there? Is Polly there?
Yes,
Kristen knows title, not Zoom.
Yeah.
no, she's here.
I was gonna say, she has Polly there, I'm sure, to help her.
Oh, yeah, she
I'll
can.
help her get off.
Yeah.
Crazy. Okay, love you guys. This is recorded, so it's going back up later. I'll talk to you later.